So welcome and thank you for coming for this talk. Hope you can find some value in this. But I'll go ahead and start. So first off, a little summary about what I want to talk about today. I'm going to go through a little bit about what a Valheim is and a history about Valheim, how everything started with the release, the launch, the reception about that, going a few war stories happened along the way. I'm going to go through the different patches that we've done since release. We're still not at 1.0. I'm going to go through a few challenges that we've had during that time. I'm going to talk a little bit about early access, how that has worked for us, some thoughts on that, and about getting to 1.0. And first off, I want to say I'm not an expert in any of this. This is just my perspective on everything. The thoughts are my own, mostly. And yeah, so take it or leave it. There's also going to be some spoilers. Personally, I hate spoilers. So yeah, you could definitely go to the Alan Wake talk instead if you don't want to be spoiled. And also, thanks for my team for helping me out on this talk, giving me some feedback to make sure that it's not just a bunch of bullshit, hopefully. And yeah, overall, this talk is just basically giving you an insight to what we've been doing, how we do stuff, and yeah. But first off, an introduction. So my name is Jonathan Smårs, or Smårs in Swedish, and I'm the lead engineer on Valheim. Also a designer. You have my email up there if you want to get a hold of me. I'm also on Twitter or X. I post stuff about Valheim and other projects as well. Also called a lot of other things at the office. J-Bloat, Johnny Long Talk are some of the more politically correct ones, so I'll leave the other ones off. I started off when I was 10 or 11 with Raydream Studio 5. I don't know if anybody recognizes that name at all. It's a 3D application in the 90s, making models and stuff. I got into modding Quake 3 and Unreal Tournament. I made some cars for a game, for an Unreal mod called Unwheel, which made it into PC Gamer. It's the Caterpillar truck down there when I was 13, which was really huge for me at the time. It felt really awesome, so I guess that was kind of my start of feeling that, yeah, I really want to make games. I did modding for a while. I got my first industry job at DICE 2006. Worked on Bad Company. So depending on how you count that, I guess I got around 20 years in the gaming industry, which sounds like a lot and crazy to me because, yeah, I mean, I really don't know what I'm doing still, so yeah. I'm also a volunteer firefighter. You can see me working on Valheim from the fire truck in one of the photos there after a fire. I love traveling and hiking in saunas and jumping in lakes and stuff like that. And I have 4 lovely kids that I try to spend time with. I also just want to that sounded bad, sorry. We have an office, which is awesome. But I work mostly from home, so I do get to spend a lot of time with them, which I'm really happy for. I also, besides modding, which I think is great, it's a great way to get into the industry, I also have done a lot of game jams, which is the little, yeah, all those little icons down in the bottom there. And just a small tip for anybody wondering, getting into the industry, learning to make games, what should I do and all that. I would personally really recommend modding or game jams because it really teaches you from start to finish how to make something. It gives you a deadline. You go through all the steps, and you can get feedback for what you've done and improve on that. And also, you have something to put in your portfolio because you're making stuff, put it in there. It's really nice to do them in person. That's the best ones, but there's also online events. I'm sure you all know this already, so I'll just go ahead. So what is Valheim? It's a game made by Iron Gate and published by Coffee Stain. Both of us are located in a small town called Skövde in Sweden with about 40,000 people. It's in between, you could say it's in between Stockholm and Gothenburg. The game was made by a very small team. We have grown a little bit since then, but not a lot. And it's an amazing team. I just want to give a huge shout out to everybody on the team and at the company. It's really a lot of talented people doing a great job. And also all our talented partners, our publisher Coffee Stain, the animation studio Brick, which made these awesome animated trailers that I was showing before we started off, and which you'll see during this talk. Also, like lots of other partners, Patrick and Dennis for amazing music and audio, and Pictive and Fish Labs for porting and stuff like that. So, yeah. I said that already. So the game is a brutal Viking exploration game for 1 to 10 players. It's a huge procedural world with 9 biomes, 2 of which are unreleased. One is coming quite soon. It's called a survival game, and I guess it is. But originally, this was thought of as an adventure game. And we still think of it as that, mainly. But it's, yeah, so. The design of Valheim is based around 3 design pillars, our ABC, which is adventure, building, and combat. And we try to keep an even balance of these 3 throughout the game, and not lean too heavily into any of these. And these lead to one of the things that I like most about the game, and I think is one of the reasons why it's done well, is that it gives players a lot of different ways to play the game. So we cater to a bunch of different play styles, which means that you can play the game together with a group of friends, even though they're not all into the exact same kind of a game. It's a co-op game. You play it on your own server and in your own time. Somebody wants to go out fighting, somebody wants to stay at home and build a house, somebody else wants to farm and make food, and somebody wants to go chopping wood. And we don't have a traditional leveling mechanic where you have to stay at the same pace all the time or you'll fall behind. So everything is based more on items. And there's a small skill leveling system in there as well. But it works pretty well, I think. And it also has kind of an iconic retro graphic feel, which is, oops, wrong key here, wait. There we go, I'm supposed to scroll on these notes, which doesn't want to work, so. Yeah, but it has an old style of graphics, but with modern lighting and effects. It also has, maybe you could call it retro game values. We don't have any microtransactions or require you to be online or battle passes or invasive DRM and bullshit like that. I think that's a lot of things that people appreciate. I don't know. Yeah. A short history about how did everything start. And this is before my time, so I shouldn't be the one telling this story. But here I am giving the talk, so here it goes. It all started out as a solo project by Richard Svensson. He did it in his free time. He was working at Pieces Interactive. And let's see what I got there. Yeah. He got his friend and colleague Henrik Törnqvist to join him as a co-founder and formed Iron Gate in April of 2019. And at the same time, they also hired their first employee, Robin, who's sitting right here. Awesome guy. You can talk to him afterwards. He loves food. Originally, the game was supposed to be a peer-to-peer MMO called Fade, which is why our networking model is not a traditional server-client model, but individual clients are owners of the area that they enter, which makes it's quite good for a game where you're exploring in different areas, because you will have 0 lag even if you're on crappy connections in different areas of the world. But it also means that if you are and you're in the same area, some people, yeah, a lot of people complain about this as well. So let's see. A little bit about how we do stuff and what we do at Iron Gate. One of our principles to work after is the good enough sentiment, trying to make everything good enough, like not trying to make everything perfect, not overcomplicate things, spend tons of time on overscoping certain things. This is also something that we constantly struggle with, so it's not easy to. It's easier to say than to do, I guess. Work ethics, I think, is an important part. Something I wanted to mention because it's not always great in our industry. At Iron Gate, we believe that people have to have a healthy work-life balance to make the best games possible. So we have 7-hour workdays, 6 weeks vacation. We don't do overtime. We don't crunch. These were things that were established before release as well, before all the success and everything. So yeah, just want to say, let's try to move the industry in that direction, and we'll get better games, and everybody will earn more money in the end anyway. So let's try to help each other out on that. I need to see if I can scroll. Yes, I can. Good. Okay, so small team. We are, I think, 13 people at the moment in total at the company. And we want to stay small. There's a lot of value in this for us. It means that we have a lot of people who do a lot of different stuff, like wear many hats. And that's the type of company that I really enjoy working on. You can do a little bit of each thing. I didn't say that in the introduction, but I started off as a 3D artist. Now I'm a programmer. Yeah. And we want to stay focused on our vision for the game, which is basically make the best possible game that we can, without worrying too much of the other aspects of business and too many opportunities and things like that, which is a luxury we can afford because we've had success. So it's easy to say that, and it might not be easy for everybody to do that, but we're happy to be in a position where we can. And yeah, everything we do is for the greater good of Valheim. Our fans might sometimes disagree, but there's also a lot of people who offer us support and say that, yeah, keep doing what you're doing it good, and so on. So we're happy for that. And also, I just want to shout out to QA, which I think is sometimes undervalued, and it deserves a lot more. I've had the great pleasure of working with great QA, which is really a big help, having fast iteration time, always keeping the game, everything working really well, not ending up in a buggy mess. Yeah. So the launch. On February 2nd, 2021, Valheim launched into early access. It sold 5 million copies within the first month. You can see that on the graph there. I think that's 2 months on the graph. And 10 million within 6 months, which was a whole lot more than anybody ever thought or expected or could imagine in any way, and it's completely crazy. But yeah. It also launched on Xbox, Microsoft Store first in 2022, and then on Xbox Series and One in 2023. Reception, it's done incredibly well. We're very happy for that. At the time of release, it was the 5th most played game on concurrent players on Steam ever. And since then, it's been passed by a whole bunch of games, really successful, great games. It was called a rare exception of early access. Early access has had kind of a bad name for various reasons. So that's a very nice thing to hear. We also got the Game of the Year award from PC Gamer, which is awesome. It was the first early access game to get that award. We also got the GDCA 2 awards 2 years ago. Sadly, none of us were here at the time because of COVID. Yeah, I like this GIF over here showing the search queries for the US which was every single state for 10 days straight was just Googling Valheim, which is, to me, insane that it's like not something more important, but yeah, it's it's kind of funny. So why did it go so well? And yeah, I'm not the person to ask. Everybody has their own theories. Your guess is as good as mine. Yeah, nobody was expecting it to go this well. Internally, their hopes were to sell like 10 or 20K to be able to continue working on the game. Otherwise, we maybe would have like had to stop working on it and start, or they would have to start working on something else. We don't have any real metrics or science of why it went well. But some of my, I don't know if you care why I think so, but I think some of the reasons why, besides being a kind of a approachable gameplay loop that worked, that was both like challenging but also accessible, but also let you do whatever you want in the world, combined with releasing during COVID when everybody was stuck in their apartments and allowing them to play a game like up to more like a co-op game with more than 4 players, together with your friends, just running around in the forest, chopping down trees. I guess that was appealing, so timing was good. It also had a very low entry barrier on price. Funny story about that, the price was set to $20, I think, but the Steam like automatic translation to different currencies set it at 16 point something euros, so at launch. And you could calculate how much was lost pretty easily from that if you want to, which turns into a whole lot of money. But to be honest, I think that it was good because every single reason to make the game easier, an easier buy will make, I think it increases the chance for a game to go well. And personally, I think a lot of games on Steam are overpriced. Not for the value that they provide, definitely not. They should be priced much higher. But your main focus for a debut game I think should be getting the game into as many players' hands as possible, and just having people play it, spread the word of mouth, and better to sell 100,000 copies at $10 than to sell 10,000 copies at like $30 or something. So, yeah. Also, small download size I wanted to mention. The game was like 1 gigabyte at launch. And I think it's one thing I haven't heard mentioned too many times, but I think it could be an important factor considering the amount of people in the world who have pretty bad internet connections, and also maybe they have full hard drives. There's the Steam Deck now to consider and all things like that. So I think like buy a new game and it's like install 125 gigs. And yeah, I think it's just crazy. So I think that's a good thing to try to strive for if you can. And also, it had trees that would fall on your head and kill you. And I guess that was a good reason as well. OK, so I'm going to go into some war stories, some funny things or not so funny things that happened during our launch. First off, like I said, nobody was expecting huge sales. Coffee Stain, our publisher, have this funny thing where they do internal betting at the company. And I've been told there's no stakes involved. I'm not sure that I'm trusting that, but it's just for fun. But here are the numbers, anyway, for what they believed that Valheim would sell and the rating on Steam that would be. Thankfully, our producer then, or our publisher then, Emilia, was the second highest. She's sitting right here. She's now the studio head of Coffee Stain, so. Yeah, she believed in us the most, and we're happy for that. So, yeah, it's just a funny little list there. Then we have the roadmap, which is part of the title, I guess. So what happened was our publisher thought it not Emilia, she was actually on maternity leave at the time, I think. They wanted us to publish a roadmap because that's what early access games do. And this was like maybe not very well communicated. And it was kind of hacked together at the time, and it showed up while Richard and Robin were just trying to fix bugs and get the game working and everything, and they're like, oh, what are these things that we're going to release in 2021, this year? So it was never meant to like have a big promised list of features and set a deadline like that. That was, yeah. Didn't turn out so well because the community, the internet never forgets, and they like to remind us that we've promised this and that we're a horrible developer for not filling our promises. That said, it's definitely great to have a plan and communicate it to your players, but maybe do only the things that you know that you can do. Then we have this other thing. We bought a horse, supposedly. This is Lisa. She's also sitting right up here, our fantastic 3D artist, then also community manager. The real story behind this is that a local riding club was having some financial trouble during COVID, so they just asked if we wanted to sponsor them for a not so huge amount and to buy a horse. And we said, sure, that sounds like a fun idea. We can help them out. And we posted this in one of our updates. Lisa thought, this sounds like a good idea. And they named the horse Valheim. So it's worth it just for that. I think it's awesome. She lives in Skövde somewhere. If you want to visit her, I'm sure you're welcome to. Yeah, that's all we did. Nothing more. But the community also thought, like, why are you wasting your time? You should hire more people, finish the game, do all those things. Yeah. So, quick rundown about the updates we have made since release. Here is a little overview about the patches that we made. We've had 5 bigger, like one big update and some small updates, and 79 like tiny updates with mixed things. We have Ashlands coming up quite soon, and after that we have Deep North with 1.0 coming. I put some graphs in because people like graphs, and it's showing kind of like the first one at the top is like the concurrent players of Valheim's entire lifetime, and then since that kind of, to zoom in a little bit, is showing the updates below there. Just to see what the updates have for effect. And it's nice. I mean, it's definitely really nice. But ultimately, it's not really our goal to like make an update just to get more players in or to sell more copies or anything like that. We just want to do what's right for the game, make the game in the best way that we can. And we're learning as we go. We're definitely making mistakes along the way. So the first update was Hearth and Home. First kind of bigger update. It reworked a lot of the systems, balancing work, added some build pieces, and added like writable, nameable creatures. The community were like, there's no progress, there's no progression, so that's too bad, I guess. There's a picture of one of the interesting bugs that showed up, like we're going to add a hot tub. But turns out you can go swimming under it, and also if you destroy it, the whole world would have the ocean level of the hot tub. So from just like wanting to do one simple small thing often turns into more headaches. So then we did an abomination update, which was we wanted another creature for the swamp. This is not the final version. It's like yeah. I mean, it doesn't look great, but the final form is like some of our favorite creature in the game still. We were thinking like we wanted to release a patch and not mention this so that people would just be running around in the swamp and then all of a sudden it's like, rah! But we realized that people didn't appreciate when we make things and don't write it in the patch notes. So yeah, we started making more detailed patch notes after that. It's based on a Swedish folktale called Rotvälta, which means like a fallen tree stump with roots. And the story is something like, don't play close to those or it will eat you. I guess because it can like flip up and they can get, The next update was ice caves. We thought the mountains were a little bit bare. We added a dungeon to the ice caves. We had an armor set, a mini boss. One of those stories where it's like, oh, we just need a dungeon. Turns into one more thing, one more thing, one more thing. We also had we were finishing up this update, and it felt like something is missing. And Robin, like Friday morning, he's like, I made a concept for a bat. And then he just like threw together this model, textured it, threw it over to Christopher sitting over there, our animator, animated some stuff, threw it back to me, implemented stuff, made it work, put it in the cave, and it was all done within one day, which that's why we call it Bat Friday. And we try to say, oh, should we have a Bat Friday this Friday? And then eventually we haven't had a lot of those, but something that we strive for. It's also been renamed to Feature Creep Friday, which for some reason gets canceled every time. So yeah, I'm a supporter of those. After that, Mistlands was our first big update with a new biome. It had lots of new content of every type of the game, items and monsters and food and everything. Neutral creatures. It had a whole magic system, and yeah, big update. The community was positive mostly. I mean, it was well received, but some people were not huge fans of the mist covering a lot of the area. The last bigger update we made was Hilder's Request, which is, it started out actually, I think Lisa wanted to make, or was it that Robin told? I don't remember, yeah. Lisa wanted something to do between an update, and Robin was like, yeah, you can make some cool clothes or something. So she made some nice dresses and stuff, and then, so it was meant to be just like a tiny little thing, and then one day Richard bikes to the office, and he's like, oh, I have this idea, let's make a new NPC, and a whole, like, you have to do this and this to get those things, and yeah, it just kind of ran away again and grew into this like much bigger thing, which makes like everything takes time. So sometimes it's good to ask, like, is this progressing our to the goal that we are trying to reach? Or like, it's also good to make like side content, as we call it, but in the end, like, people are always asking like, Mistlands when, Ashlands when, constantly. So yeah. It grew a little bit bigger, but I think it also turned out quite nice. We also had a world modifier added at the time, which was something that is like allowing you to customize the game. It's difficulty, but also settings, making like being able to play without a map, without portals, or customize it in different ways, which kind of goes hand in hand with our philosophy of like, it's your world, it's your game, do whatever you want with it. And at the same time, it's not like, it was a little bit mixed internally. Like, we also think it's interesting to say like, oh, you can actually beat Valheim. Now you can turn it down and it can be easier. So yeah, it's not completely a given. But I think it's something that a lot of people appreciate, and it's also for myself personally, I like to be able to say, oh, I want a bigger challenge, let's crank up the difficulty a little bit, but also I want to be able to play with my kids, so I can turn off the like monsters and stuff, and we can walk around in the world. We go into a dungeon filled with skeletons, and my 5-year-old asked me like, what are the skeletons doing here? Because they're just passive. I'm like, just don't hit them. They'll be nice if you're nice to them. They live here. Oh, okay, yeah. Oh, there's a troll. Do they live in the forest? And so on. So yeah. Ashlands is our upcoming second biome to be released. It's set to be released quite soon. It's beginning to reach the end of the biomes that we have promised. We're catering to the playstyles a lot, giving a lot of new items, lots more content, new mechanics, and everything. It's going to be very interesting to see how it is received. Let's see, yeah. So a few other challenges that we have had along the way. The workload balance is, like, we are a very small team, to decide on what do we put our time on. Like, do we want to fix bugs, work on like side grade, secondary stuff, improve stuff, polish old things, work on the next biome, optimize the game, do platform work for other platforms, take care of the team, do community engagement and things like that. It's always a real balance of trying to figure those things out. Being on multiple platforms definitely does take some time. Like, we have really great porting studios that have helped us out on this, but because we want feature parity, everything that's put into the game, we want it to be the same on PC as on Xbox and everything. There's always some overhead keeping all the branches in sync and things like that. So yeah, and also we want to support cross-platform multiplayer, which sounds like, of course, you want to support cross-platform multiplayer. And I'm glad that we do, because it's best for the game. But knowing the headache of making sure that everything is 100% in sync, and also having to be so careful when releasing. Like, previously, we can release on Steam at any time. We can hotfix stuff all the time. It's so easy. That's really nice. And now having to go through cert and make sure that we're timing everything much more carefully, that's can be a nightmare. Also, like the lowest spec machine, the Xbox One, makes us have to spend some time, well, mostly the porting studio, but still spend time looking at optimizing the game. But in the end, it's also good for everybody. So yeah, it's a mixed bag, I guess. One little not so funny story, what happened on Xbox. Even after tons of QA and testing on Xbox, at release, there were some reports like, oh, my house fell apart. There's this mountain where there isn't supposed to be a mountain and things like that. Like, the map would be 99.9% identical except in certain spots. And it took us a while to figure out that, I don't know how many of you are programmers, but like there was like some tiny, tiny discrepancies in the float, like rounding point calculations between Mono, the old version of Mono, and IL2 CPP on Xbox, which is fine for all cases, except if you have like a huge long list of random procedural generation that becomes cascadingly wrong at certain points. Like, it just flips. Like, at one point, the switch is flipped, and then the rest after that will be different. So that was also a headache to get that fixed. Yeah, spending some time getting merch done. I have some here for those of you who are not bored and leave before the end. Starting a company with a new team, getting everybody synced and working together. Growing the team, people changing roles within the team, and spending time on team building, making sure that everybody's can work together and are healthy and so on. Creating an office space, moving between offices. Like, there's so many of these practical things that might not be considered part of like pure game development, but they do take time. Production pipeline changes, like in the beginning, when there's very few people, then how we work was just like, oh, this is a cool thing, okay, let's make it, and there's like 3 people in that room, and that becomes made, and after that, like, move over to, like, we had Google Sheets, which was not great, and then we moved to Trello, and then we moved to Monday, which is what we're working on now. But it's like, it's a big difference. Like, every single person you add to your team is adding complexity, and making it, yeah, like, there's more overhead involved in the production. Also, engine upgrades. I'm sure everybody loves to upgrade to the next version of Unity or any other game engine. It works great most of the time, actually, but there's some hiccups. So, I don't know how I'm doing for time. Maybe it's OK. Early access, then. Why does early access exist? And is it good, or is it bad, or what is it? I don't really generally like making lists of pros and cons. It's much too black and white for me, but I did it anyway because it's good to, yeah, I don't know, to list things up. But everything everything is a gray, I would say. So first off, why would somebody do early access? Obviously for funding. You don't have enough money to work on the game for 5 years, so you want some extra funding for that. That's a very valid reason. Early evaluation, like this is really both good and bad, but it could be a good idea to get to know, is this gonna be a good game? Like, do people like this game or not? Or should I spend more of my time making this game, or should I make something else? And that is a good thing, but it's also a bad thing if you're presenting something that is not in a good state. So when you release to early access, make sure that it's in the best presentable state that you could be, because you only do release once in that regard. So it's both good and bad. 2 releases, which is kind of true, kind of not true. It's definitely both good and bad. Like you release it early access and you get your 1.0. Like I'm not sure all the Steam algorithms work and stuff like that, so maybe it's not really 2 releases, but still. It could be a point of buying 2 lottery tickets instead of 1. You get a lot of play testing and feedback from people. Some people expect this to be kind of like a beta of some sort, which it is not. Most players do not treat it as early access, and they will give you bad reviews. But you do get feedback. Like if it's well planned, you can get the feedback that you need to make the game good for your 1.0 release. And it also is like helping you growing the community, engaging the community, making them kind of part of the game development. Like depending on how much feedback you're taking, like balance changes and improvements, it's a really good way to engage players in your game. It's also very inspiring to have people play your game and say that they want more, rather than sitting by yourself in a basement, in a garage, or something like that, and just waiting. Cons. Bad first impressions. Like I already said, it's a really bad idea to release a game if it's not in a good state. Then it's better to keep it in. So that will lead to negative reviews on Steam if you choose Steam as your platform. And you might think that, yeah, there's the early access reviews and all that, but and people might come back, but most people don't come back to change the review. They're done with the game. If it's a bad game, it's going to keep being a bad game. Like your review score is going to be there. And it will also demotivate you a lot if you have a release and it turns into like mixed or mostly negative or something like that. What are the chances that you're going to get more money from that or get more sales? I mean, the chances are you're going to abandon the game and then move on to something else. So make sure that don't release it too early. Also, the 2 releases, I wanted to point out that while it's good to buy the 2 lottery tickets, the chance of snowballing or getting like a really good viral effect is also decreased, because a lot of people avoid early access games and like, why would I play an early access game? There's like 10 million games I could play that are done, and my Steam library is enormous. I don't know about you, but yeah, it's definitely true for me. So it also makes sense to not do that. And the final point I want to make is about managing expectations, which is for us really the big one. When you are working on your game by yourself, you can of course do it in your own time, take your time, no stress from the outside. And when you're done, or if you need to spend another year doing it, then you do that. As soon as you've released your game, I'm getting into this one. As soon as you release your game, you have to tackle a bunch of other things as well. The first of them being is that your game is no longer only your game. And in some ways, it's almost more the player's game. You sold them something, they paid for it, they own this. If you break their new toy, they're going to be pissed off. So if you want to be able to like keep the pure, like if you want to be able to make like really rough decisions or big decisions, changes to the end of your game, then it's probably a good idea to not release it before that. And you can, of course, do it, but the response will probably not be great. Also staying relevant for, like many early access games like us are early access for multiple years. And it could be difficult to feel motivation after a number of years with player counts dwindling and thinking like, okay, how many people will actually play this once it's done, because we had our time at some point. And providing support, like technical support for both actual customer support, like answering emails and stuff like that, but fixing, like jumping over to fix bugs for current players rather than actually just work on the game that you want to make and do those things later. So that changes this whole workload balance thing quite a bit. Backwards compatibility, this is of course different for different games, but I think it's applicable for a lot of early access games, especially for us where we do not want to, like, people spend, in some cases, hundreds of hours on their world, building and exploring and making this world theirs. We would not want to post an update that would force them to reset their world and start from the beginning. Like sometimes it would be beneficial in some ways, but we have to put down a lot of time making sure that everything works like with a world that was created at early access launch even. And that turns into a lot of extra work in some cases, both technically and also design-wise. Like, yeah. That being said, I'm not completely promising that there might not come a point where that happens, but hopefully not. It also goes for, I want to mention, it also goes for save games, making sure that they do not get corrupted or anything like that. And we've had cases where, sadly, many cases where something breaks and we get emails like, I spent 400 hours building a city and now my world is gone. And to be honest, we've had a lot of sleepless nights over stuff like that, like posting an update, thinking this is going to be good, and then like waking up the next morning to hear like, oh, there's 5 people who lost their worlds. So that really does hurt a lot. And we do a lot, like we really do as much as we can to try to prevent that. And I think we have had a lot of cases where we've been able to recover this in some way, which also takes time. But we've also put in systems like backup systems and like better cloud save support and things like that to prevent that from happening. It also raises the standards both internally and externally. So if Valheim never went into early access, it would have been done by now. The last biomes would have been done maybe a bit leaner if you compare them to other biomes. But because of the effect of having a successful game and having people wait for that, and they've waited for a while, then you really have the pressure of, okay, we really want them to like this. Like, we don't want to disappoint our players, which raises our own standards, which makes us like spend even more time building the next biome, which raises the standard even more. And then it's a vicious cycle. It just builds on itself. So that is something that we struggle a lot with, trying to find what is the sweet spot of good enough and what is like, no, this isn't good enough. Is it going to be good enough? Yeah, so on. And also to think about what is your ultimate motivator on why are you making this game? What is your point? What is your focus on your next update? I mean, it makes sense that some games are like if you just want to sell more, or if you want to like increase your player count and have this like, I mean, of course, everybody wants to make money and so on, but and have to. But is that your goal? Like, are you thinking only about the next update, or if you want to release an update every single week or every single month or something like that? That puts a lot of stress and changes how the game will be in the end. For us, like I mentioned earlier, we approach this just wanting to make the best possible game, which is a luxury that, gladly we can afford. Yeah, that's basically everything I just said. Why did did Valheim go into early access? It was for the same reasons, which I also mentioned maybe, but because funding did not, we needed to make sure that it was worth putting more money into this, or not we, the publisher wanted to make sure it's worth putting more money into this or not. And that, I guess, is a big reason why many people would do that. One thing that we do, though, is that we do not treat it as early access, which is one really important point, is that if you're releasing your game on early access, if you think about it as early access and think, oh, it's fine, we'll just put work in progress, missing, that button doesn't work, there's some bugs over there, don't walk over there, then that's the experience that people are going to have. And we do not want to put anything in the game that doesn't feel good enough or done, which is why we made, say, the first 60% of the biomes done, and the last ones are basically missing, rather than making 60% of them done individually and have this half-broken mess, missing a bunch of stuff along the way. And I think that is a big reason why we get a lot of nice comments about saying that it doesn't feel like an early access game. That's very nice, because that's what we were hoping. We do not release tons of updates. It's great if you can and if that's part of your plan, but that's not how we do it. We try to have a good community relationship, communicate on a lot of different, we have Discord and Reddit and lots of different places where we communicate. I also think that it's not really hard to get in touch with us, the actual developers, which I think could be kind of rare. A lot of us will respond if you write to us in various places, and I think that could be appreciated. We also have some trolls on social media. My favorite is a Twitter account dedicated to asking why there's not bikes in Valheim at every single update. So yeah, I think it's funny. And Lisa does too, so. Yeah, staying true to our vision while also listening to feedback. This is the balance, which is really difficult. Maybe I'm repeating myself again, but while we want to stay true to this vision, it's also, there are cases, of course, where we have this idea and we realize with the feedback that we're getting, no, that wasn't a great idea. So then we can tweak it, or then we can think about it one more time. So, and also take in feedback of various types, of course. So, yeah. Yeah, just want to make the best game that we can, like I already said. So, is your game suited for early access? Let's see, this was supposed to be that I was going to click them down, but I guess I did miss that. It's just supposed to say no. So if you have to ask, I would say no. If you don't have to, and if you have to ask then, or if you're unsure, I would say don't do it. Better to wait. Keep it in the oven, make sure it's really, really good. Even if you do release, make sure it's really, really good, but yeah. Also, I would say single experience games, it's not an expression, but games where you're meant to play it more or less one time from beginning to end, story-based games, or very specific, say Metroidvania, where you have you want this one progression that you probably do one time. I would say don't do that then. Also, live service, I don't know, they're going to make updates forever anyway, so it's basically just the same thing. Why call it early access? I think that's weird. But games which are more focused on replayability, where you need balance feedback, or you want a lot of balance feedback, you want to iterate on that a lot. That is better suited for that, and multiplayer games, which you will be playing and coming back to a lot. Let's see, how are we for time? Not so great. Is Valheim suitable? It's kind of suitable. It did go quite well, but it definitely made the game development take a little bit more time. But in the end, I think it will make Valheim into a better game. So bottom line, it depends. It's not for everybody. It's not free money. And also, again, I'm not an expert at this. If you feel that you want to do it, go ahead and do it. It's definitely up to you. If you do it, have a plan. Think through what you're doing. Talk to people. Do your research. Communicate with the community what your plan is. There's lots of different models to do this. For example, like Hades, great example, had like I think it was like a 1-year plan of having updates every single month. And then going into 1.0 after that. Yeah, I think I'll skip through that. And getting to 1.0, we have the extra dot there. Have an exit strategy. Don't just like silently release 1.0 and call it 1.0 and think that, oh, it's going to explode. Try to do something with it. Make it feel like an actual release so that there's a huge reason to go back. I would say polish everything, try to go out with a bang, add things like achievements, like make it feel like high production value, everything around that. Maybe think about mod support and things like that. And project fatigue is definitely something to consider. You're probably extremely tired of your game at that time, but don't fall on the finish line. Try to finish up as much as possible. And these are the things that we're kind of trying to think about and aim for our last biome, which is Deep North, which will come out with early access, first 1.0 release after our Ashlands release. And that's it. Thank you. So yeah, they did say that we have time for questions because there's not a talk directly after this. I also have a few items with me, which I will throw out to you if anybody wants some stuff. I don't know. T-shirts are probably not going to be in your sizes, but let's just try anyway. You can meet at the back if you don't get the size that you want, and maybe somebody will trade you. T-shirts are horrible to throw. That's why they have these T-shirt guns. Wow. Oops. Oops. There's one more on the last one. There you go. See. Let's see, I have more. It's also good to sit in the front, I guess, if it's T-shirts. Maybe these will, wait. I'll do like this. No. You can come get these afterwards. But these I can throw farther, so a little bit farther. Actually, this is going to take too much time. Oh. There's an Xbox controller. I'm keeping that. Okay, there you go. Yeah, so any questions? Also, I guess we'll run a few questions, and if anybody wants to ask us, like basically most of the Valheim team is actually here, sitting up here front. If anybody wants to meet and talk to anybody individually, we'll stick around for a little while after this talk. But yeah, shoot, questions.
All right.
Sorry? Of course.
Okay.
Okay, over there.
All right, thank you for the fantastic talk.
To the mic, please.
Thank you for the fantastic talk, so informative. I have a question about the world modifiers. Do you get info back on what players choose, and do you act on that if you do?
Okay, the question was about do we have any information or metrics about what people choose on world modifiers? And funnily enough, we don't have any metrics whatsoever. We did have metrics, and it's a great idea to have metrics. But we used Google Analytics, which was not super popular, so we just turned it off really early on. But maybe at some point we will hopefully add that again.
Talk.
Over there?
I had a really great time playing this game with my friends. So first of all, thank you for bringing this experience to us. My question was, were you aware of any exploits or sequence breaks that players discovered, things like that, and what was your response to them?
Okay, so the question was about exploits and sequence breaks. I wouldn't say we're aware of them at the time, but we are very happy to see people exploring the game in different ways and making plays and speed runs and like playing the game backwards, doing all these crazy stuff. And we don't explicitly try to, like, as long as it's not a hard bug breaking the game, we don't want to like hard lock people away from doing that. It's just a great way to play games for people who want to do that.
Thank you.
Over there.
Hi, you mentioned your appreciation for your QA team. I'm curious, can you elaborate on how they work with the developers and the rest of your team?
Okay, so our QA team has mostly been Andreas, who's sitting over here. And he's now the producer on Valheim. He's a great guy. And he basically just means that I do stuff, immediately send it over to him, and he tries it immediately, sends it back and says what's not working, and I fix it so that there's not like this lag of things being in the game for 2 weeks before it comes back and having a long list of things, but rather like I would basically almost not even come back from getting my coffee or something, and he'd be like, oh, this is broken. I'm like, whoa, okay, oops, my bad. So yeah, and he's also like, yeah, maybe you should check this before you push. Yeah, oops. So I'm trying to get better at that. I'm a recovering thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
Over here?
Yeah. Do you ever plan on releasing on PlayStation?
Maybe. I don't know.
And if not, why?
Yeah, I can neither confirm nor deny the allegations which have been put before me, something like that.
Thank you.
Yeah, next.
Hi, you had talked about how Mistlands and Ashlands were in the original plan to ship. I'm curious if you can tell us more about your choice to make the Deep North, or where that came from.
Okay, yeah, so that was before my time. That would be Richard mainly to talk to, and he's not here. But you can ask Robin, who's been with Iron Gate the longest here. He probably has a great answer for that afterwards.
Hello. Could you talk a little bit more about the music in Valheim and just the inspiration or process for it?
Okay, so we have a composer, Patrick. He's, yeah, ask this one to Robin as well. He knows much more about this. He directs the music a lot, and it's, yeah, I think it's better. We can talk about it afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
Probably better. Thank you. Sorry. Okay, any more other questions? Then whoever wants to can come up. And yeah, thank you very much for coming.